And welcome in. Week 2 of the NFL season is here, and we are back with another edition of the Consistently Cashin podcast. I'm Colby Conway. You can find me over on X at Colby R. Conway. And with me here, as always, Mr. Ron Rigney. Ron, let everyone know where they can find you over on X.
On the X, it's just real simple. It's just Ron Rigney on the X machine all day long.
Easy enough. And we are coming off of a cashing week 1. We snuck in. We looked really good after the 1 o'clock games. It got a little dicey there in the 4 o'clock hour, but we held on, to say the least. And at the end of the day, in those 50-50 cash games, like those double ups, whether you finish first or whether you finish in the 48th percentile, I think that's how it works, or 52nd percentile, whatever it is. As long as you're in the green, whether it's far right or at the very end of the green, it's cashing, baby. 2 to 4, 5 to 10. Can't complain about that. So we are 1-1 in clutch games this year in terms of our consistently cash performance, but we are on to week 2. And Ron, let me ask you right up front, what games kind of interest you from a DFS perspective, and what games just give you the I guess it's the ick, as the kids say.
The ick, the ick. They don't give that those mega aura points, if you will.
Yeah.
So I'm looking. We're looking at totals again. The one that I'm looking at, and I don't have the total. I'm finding it. Here we go. That Tampa Bay Detroit game, like that one a lot. 48.5 points again. Baker Mayfield looking good last week. Detroit allowing 317 yards to Matthew Stafford, especially after Puka Nakua's out, finding guys that he can throw to. But Tampa Bay has a lot of guys they can throw to. They have 2 or 3 that are pretty damn good. And the same thing on the Lions side. So I look for that, especially at home for Detroit inside. Look for that one to be pretty high scoring game. I think, we talked a little bit about Indy last week, Indy and Houston. I think this Indy and Green Bay game can be a little bit sneakily high scoring, more so than I think people think. Obviously, without Jordan Love, going to be a little dicey at times for Green Bay, but I think they're going to find ways to score, and we're going to see that reflected in our lineups a little bit. If I'm avoiding any games, I'd say I'm probably avoiding mostly New York and Tennessee. I just don't have a lot of players in seasonal from either one of those teams, and the total's not that high. Weren't too impressed with that Jets offense this first time out, but other than that, there's not a lot of games I'm really looking at that I'm really just completely grossed out by. I don't know what are your thoughts on those games?
Yeah, I'm looking at some of these, and Steelers Broncos doesn't do it for me. There's some cheap guys that I like, but I won't pay for anybody noteworthy in that game. Bengals Chiefs, that game I was looking at here has got a 48. I do not see a path to that game going over. I
No,
don't know if
no.
Cincy scores more than 14 points in that game. Like, Kansas City has enough opportunistic tendencies on defense. All they have to do is say, we will not let Jamar Chase beat us. And then who is it? It's Yoshi, it's Zach Moss, Jermaine Burton, and Chase Brown. I think Burrow's going to struggle again. I don't think that game gets anywhere near that 48 game total. Giants Commanders, that game could just be one of those where it's like, okay, offenses going against worse defenses.
Yeah.
Do either stop the other one, or at the same point, then you have the same thing. Does Daniel Jones, and it doesn't matter who he plays. He's just going to do his own thing. I really like the over in the Browns Jaguars. We're going to talk about some Browns, believe it or not, in this game that I kind of find interesting. So I like some points to be scored in that one. Bucks Lions is going to be a fantasy bonanza. I'm all about that one. And then Chargers Panthers, I think if you're going to go with a Chargers running back, if you can pick the right one, go for it. Other than that, maybe Chargers defense. That's about it. I can't trust Carolina. But you look at it here, we have Chargers Panthers, Raiders Ravens, Colts Packers, Jets Titans, Seahawks Patriots, Browns Jaguars. I'll add that in there. And Steelers Broncos. On the main slate, we have 7 games with a line of 42 or fewer points. 7 games. That's insane. Luckily, we
that's
have
old school
Rams
football.
Cardinals at 47, Bengals Chiefs at 48, which is a joke. And then Bucks Lions at 51. But good Lord, how many low scoring games are they projecting here? But nonetheless, that is our job to find the clutch players that we're going to use. So let's look at the quarterback position, headlined by Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes. You also got Anthony Richardson in there, and then you do have Dak Prescott. Those are the high-end quarterback options. You can obviously drop down a little bit, look at Jaden Daniels, even Matthew Stafford against the Cardinals. What kind of catches your eye here at the quarterback position or is worth calling out?
Well, looking at the top there, I mean, I think a couple of those, like you said, have the potential to be some trap games at Mahomes, against Cincy. Again, not really sure what to get out of that. They may not have to throw a whole lot to win that game. Anthony Richardson again against that Green Bay defense, not bad. I don't know if I want to pay up for that $6,800 price tag though. But if I'm looking at guys at the top, I'm looking at Lamar. I think Lamar's probably my favorite one if I'm going to spend up. I'm probably not going to do that. Although I think there's enough value guys, even though some of them are super chalky, that if you want to get Lamar in there and try to get in another one of those weapons for Baltimore, you can do that. But the guy that I went immediately to was Baker Mayfield, down a little bit lower at 5,900. Again, a high total. He looked solid last week. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Kate Otten, those guys are healthy. He's got a couple of running backs in the backfield. Offensive line didn't look too bad. Now, granted, it was against a bad defense. I get that. But Detroit had a few issues again last week with Matthew Stafford. He had a nice game, 3-17 and a score and a pick. So I don't see any reason Baker Mayfield can't do that in Detroit against the Lions. So that's kind of the one that I settled on. So for me, there was either high end guy or all the way down to Baker Mayfield. There wasn't a lot in between that I felt real good about.
I think in GPPs, you can look at Deshaun Watson. That Jacksonville secondary is so bad. And Tyson Campbell's now out, and he was the only one that was even worth anything.
Yeah.
And I still liked picking against him. So I can't trust Deshaun Watson in cash games, but in GPPs this week, I think you could take a look at him. I do like Baker Mayfield. I like Matt Stafford. Love Jaden Daniels. I like Jared Goff on the other side of that game as well.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm paying up, I think I'm actually looking at Dak. I know New Orleans has a toughish defense, but Lattimore didn't practice. I don't envision that he will play this week. I'm going to see if he was officially ruled out, but he did not practice. Yeah, he remained out of practice. So game time decision. I don't think he's going to play. And it just comes back to Dak at home. Dak at home last year, 8-0 in the regular season, 22-3 touchdown to interception ratio, averaged 308 passing yards a game. It's tough to run on New Orleans. It's not as tough to throw, and they don't have Lattimore. So I think if you're paying up, I think you look at Dak. Otherwise, I love getting down into this Jaden Daniels, Matthew Stafford, Baker Mayfield territory at quarterback. That just seems like a delight for our week 2 lineup. So let's jump over to running back here. No Christian McCaffrey. Jonathan Taylor in a really good matchup against a Green Bay defense that was just gashed by Mr. Saquon Barkley. You have Breece Hall, Travis Etienne. You got Alvin Kamara, who will be playing from behind most of that game. So this could be a 13 catches for 39 yards type of event for Alvin Kamara. Kyron's in a good spot. If I'm not mistaken, I think he destroyed Arizona each time they played last year. I'm going to pull that up here. And then you get some of my favorite guys here. But talking about the running back position before I chime in on some of mine.
Well, Kyron too last week had 91% of the snaps as well. So Blake Corum, I think, saw the field twice and didn't touch the ball. So they definitely want to get him the ball as much as they possibly can. For my running backs, again, Homer, a little bit not. I went with Jonathan Taylor. I think it's a solid matchup against Green Bay. Again, I don't really know what that game is going to kind of show as far as if it's going to be high scoring, if it's not. Felt decent with the price tag there. You got 16 touches or 16 carries last week and a score. I think he can surpass that. I think they're going to want to get him the ball. Green Bay, not looking as good as we thought that they would, as you said, against Saquon Barkley. Went to the next one, the champagne of running backs, Mr. Zach Charbonnet. Kenneth Walker with that doubtful tag again. Charbonnet's probably going to be a little bit chalky, but again, at $5,800, when you're trying to pay up at a couple other spots, I think he's a no-brainer. Scored a touchdown last week. Third down back. The talent is there. I think he just needs the opportunity, which it looks like he's going to have. The only other one I was looking at, of course, Jordan Mason is awfully chalky, but again, it's hard to not look at him at that $5,200 price point with him getting the ball. I believe he got it 30 times last week, so they want him to play that Christian McCaffrey role. He did it. Might be a little bit tougher going this week, but just kind of looking in the in between here. I looked at Derrick Henry a little bit. I just don't know if he's going to get the ball enough. But I think another one that I wanted to try to get in, but I just didn't have enough cash, was Josh Jacobs against Indy. We saw what Joe Mixon did last week with 30 carries. He just absolutely destroyed them. And I don't necessarily like him so much for that reason. I think he can run on them a little bit, but I feel like they're going to have to lean on him this week without Jordan Love. So, yeah, I feel like he's going to get the ball early and often.
Derrick Henry is one of my favorite plays on the slate. The Raiders were gashed on the ground in week 1, 6.5 yards per carry, 9th highest explosive run rate allowed. Baltimore's heavy favorites in this game. expect a healthy dosage of Derrick Henry. So I like him a lot. I pulled up the Kyron stats from last year against Arizona. So they played Arizona in week 6 and week 12. That was Kyron's last game before he missed the next 4. And it was his first game back from injury. 20 for 158 and a touchdown, 16 for 143 on the ground, and 6 for 61 with 2 scores through the air. Just utterly destroyed them last year. So I think you can look to Kyron because Stafford trusts him, obviously, but so does Sean McVay, and he just doesn't take him off the field. So I think you can look there. You could very easily just save yourself some money if you want to go high-end receiver and just eat the chalk and go Zach Charbonnet and Jordan Mason at your 2 running backs. Easily do it. You come out to what, 58 and 52, so 11 grand between your running backs, and then you can start trying to decipher between CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra, Cooper Kupp, Mike Evans, Devontae Adams. Go down to Chris Godwin, you go to Debo. There are a ton of options at wide receiver. I'm a sucker for all of the high-priced receivers this week. So a Charbonnet Mason running back room will fuel my addiction to high-priced wide receivers here in week 3. For me, CeeDee Lamb's far and away my top guy. If we have the money, he is the one that I am putting into our lineups because I am going to tell you, obviously, Dak's home road splits were quite noticeable last year. And if it surprises you, so were CeeDee Lamb's. In home games last year, I don't know if you're ready for this. In home games last season, CeeDee Lamb averaged 9.1 receptions per game, so 9 DraftKings points, for 119 yards. So that's 11. So now we're at 20 and 1 touchdown per game. Basically averaged 26 fantasy points per game at home last year. Pretty darn good, if you ask me. So I am willing to pay the 8,800 for CeeDee Lamb. They're going to throw the ball all over, and we've seen with Dallas too. They can get up big. They'll keep throwing it through the 3rd and into the early part of the 4th. So I am not.
You're
worried
right,
about
absolutely.
that at all. They're not afraid to rub it in a little bit. So CeeDee Lamb is my preferred option amongst those top dogs. Anybody else that catches your eye up there?
Just looking at where we're at here as far as salary, and I love everything you said about CeeDee Lamb, and I hope we can find a way to make that work. Looking at, again, going with Baker Mayfield, I like getting that Mike Evans stack with him, so I'm looking at that, towards the top there. CeeDee Lamb again, going down a little bit. Cooper Kupp's back in that number 1 spot. He's going to be that guy that's going to get all the targets there. Again, not a ton at the top that I really feel good about, but where I ended up going with my 3, went down a little bit further for the next one that I had was Zay Flowers. Zay Flowers and Isaiah Likely after week 1. Clearly the 2 guys they want to get the ball to in that offense. And even though Zay Flowers, he did have 6 catches last week, only had 39 yards, so they had a hard time getting him going, but he was targeted 10 times. So that tells you that they want to get him the football. I like him at that price point. I think he has a nice little bounce back game for 6,300. And you were talking about that Cleveland-Jacksonville game. I went down a little bit further, and our guy Brian Thomas Jr., even after having a solid week 1, is still way down at the bottom at $4,800. Again, that Cleveland secondary is not bad, but Christian Kirk didn't step up the way that we thought he would. Evan Ingram, kind of a pedestrian game. And with Cleveland, as you said, being able to throw on that Jacksonville secondary, there's going to have to be some sort of answer. So I feel like he's going to have a nice little target share there as well.
Absolutely. Totally get that. Down here, I love Wan'Dale Robinson, 12 targets in week 1, actually out-targeted or had more targets than Malik Neighbors in week 1. I think that could continue there. Obviously, again, if you're going to bite the chalk, you could look at one of the Rams receivers that's going to step up with Puka Nacua being out for the next couple of weeks. So whether it's Tyler Johnson or Demarcus Robinson, you can look at those guys. You can obviously go with Yoshi just because, if I'm not mistaken, I think he played 100% of the snaps last week. And if they're going to roll all the attention to Jamar Chase, he should be in line for some work there. I'm not really looking at Jermaine Burton. I'm not looking at Jordan Whittington this week. So yeah, up top here with some of the other guys, I love Chris Godwin. Cooper Kupp killed Detroit out of the slot. I expect Chris Godwin to do the same here this week. I don't want any of the Green Bay wide receivers. There was one other one I wanted to highlight. I love Amari Cooper this week. Again, I'm going at Jacksonville. I am not scared of them. Everyone talks about Cooper's bad week 1 where he only caught 2 of 9 targets for 16 yards. He did drop a would-be touchdown. So that could have changed this to like 3 catches for, I think it was about 30 yards. It would have been like 3 for 46 and a touchdown. We'd be talking a little bit differently about Amari Cooper this week. So he's another one that I like there. And I love Debo. With no Christian McCaffrey, we saw Debo last week involved with 8 carries. There's a very real chance again this week, another game of 6 to 8 targets. 6 to 8 rushing attempts.
Now, speaking to that one, let me get your thoughts on this. What do you think about Brandon Ayuk? Was very, very silent last week. Do we think that they try to get Brandon Ayuk a little more involved this week?
I think they're going to try, but I just think it's a part of some rust from
Mm-hmm.
lack of action in the preseason. I think it'll take a little bit of time, but the thing is, I don't want to pay $6,500 to try to figure it out. If this is the week, I'd rather just pay
Right.
$68 for Debo.
I was
So,
going to say that was my only drawback was the price point. If he's a little cheaper, I think he'd be a nice play. But just you can't do it at that point.
and let's head over to tight end here. What's really interesting about the tight end position is when you look at this here, the teams that have allowed the most fantasy points per games right now to tight ends, all of them play teams that don't have a tight end that's worth a you know what. The teams that have allowed the most fantasy points tight ends are Carolina, Kansas City, the Chargers, and the Cowboys. They play the Chargers. Cool. They play Cincinnati. So I guess Mike Gesicki. Chargers play Carolina, rookie, and Dallas plays New Orleans, Foster Moreau, Taysom Hill. The one that I kind of like here at tight end, Ravens have allowed the 5th most fantasy points per game to tight ends so far this year. Now, they did play like Travis Kelce, so that is going to be a factor involved in things. But when you look, Brock Bowers had himself a nice little debut, 8 targets, 6 for 58. We do get the PPR scoring in here, and with Vegas playing from behind, maybe Brock Bowers can see a good little target work or target share here, and $4,400 is very, very reasonable for a guy of his caliber.
Yeah, I looked at Brock Bowers there for 4,400. Where I ended up making my lineup though, and allowed me to pay up a couple other spots. I scrolled down quite a bit, and as Bob and I talked about on the consistency show, these tight end clutch games came from tight ends. The majority of them, I think there was like I want to say 7 guys that got a clutch game. Over half of them were on your bench. They're guys you didn't play, and one of those was Cody Parkinson for the Rams. And again, without Higbeast in there, without Nakua in there, I don't see any reason that he can't essentially see the same amount of targets. It's against Arizona. Nice little threat in the red zone as well. But going all the way down to $3,100, it allows you to do so much more with the rest of that lineup. So that's where I ended up settling. But I'm with you on Bowers too. I just couldn't make it fit price wise.
Yeah, we'll see what we can do there. Let's head over to defense here. Any thoughts at defense that kind of catch your eye here of any good matchups?
I went with Chargers. I mean, you got to pick on these teams that can't do anything, and again, that's going to be super chalky. But it's kind of shocking to me that they scored 14 points last week on DK, and they're still only $3,400 to get in that lineup. So I was kind of shocked at that price point. I was excited about it, but that was the one I felt was the best combination of matchup, price, and ability to be able to score you some points.
I'm right there with you. I didn't really look at anything else. I'm just picking on Carolina till the price point gets too much. So that'll do it. So let's go ahead. Let's start building our lineup here. So let's both put the Chargers in because we agreed there. And then we each get one player that we get to lock in, kind of no ifs, ands, or buts. So who's your top dog?
Mine's going to be Zay Flowers. I just have a feeling that Zay Flowers is going to have a big week this week. Again, coming back, 10 targets. They want to get him the football. He's going to be able to make some things happen against Vegas.
All right. I'm going to lock in Brock Bowers. Okay. So let's go ahead. Do we want to eat the chalk at running back with Charbonnet Mason? At least for now.
Let's do that and see where that gets us for now. I think it's a pretty solid way to go.
Charbonnet Mason. All right. Let's go. We may have a choice here. Let's try CeeDee Lamb. 16-1. Evans is 75. Let's see if we can get the Godwin and Mayfield stack. 4,200 for a flex. Oops. Vidal, Tucker, Slayton, Johnston, Freiermuth. I mean, we could end up. Oof. Okay, what if we move Bowers to Parkinson, 5,500 for a flex. Harris, Williams, Kirk, Kittle. There's Dobbins against Carolina if we believe in him.
Just scares me though. I feel like it's going to be one of those things where we're going to pick the wrong guy every week if we're trying to play that game. I just don't feel good about it with the Chargers running backs.
Right there's Brian Thomas.
Yeah, I mean, I had him as my third receiver. $4,800 is hard to ignore. So
we put Thomas down there. We have 700. We would be able to get Parkinson up to Hunter Henry. We didn't talk about any of those guys. 700. We could get Baker up to. We get Baker all the way up to Kyler. We just don't have any other Arizona love. Or we go off the chalk from Charbonnet. We could get up to Josh Jacobs, James Conner.
I don't feel too bad about upgrading Charbonnet to Jacobs. I feel like it's a tiny bit less chalky.
Yeah, that's true. That gives us a little bit.
That's all right. He was the guy that I really wanted to fit in. I just couldn't do it.
So then we'd have Baker, Godwin. We have nothing coming back on the Detroit side, but we'd have a cheap tight end in Parkinson, 2 running backs that probably see 20 plus carries, as long as Green Bay doesn't fall too far behind. Zay Flowers, CeeDee Lamb, and Chris Godwin should all just be target hogs. Brian Thomas Jr., the upside play. And I think he had a clutch game in week 1, right? With the 4 for 40 and a touchdown.
Yeah. He did. Yep.
And then we pick on Carolina. So I think that'll work. So that'll be the week 2 consistently cash in lineup. Baker Mayfield, Josh Jacobs, Jordan Mason, Zay Flowers, CeeDee Lamb, Chris Godwin, Colby Parkinson, Brian Thomas Jr., and the Chargers defense going against the Carolina Panthers. So, Ron, thank you for joining me as always here for the week 2 lineup. Let everyone know where they can find you and your work.
Yes, sir. BigGuyFantasySports.com. Got the consistency podcast with Mr. Bob Long every week. Did a nice little waiver wire article for you over there. Some pickups. We talked about quite a few of them in here. A couple of them are even in the lineup here. So check that out every week. That comes out Tuesday, Wednesday-ish, just kind of depending on the way life goes. But we'll get you those clutch games, get you those consistent guys on the waiver wire. I know you guys have the prop bets coming up pretty soon, so hopefully we'll win some cash on that. And hopefully we'll keep this consistently cash and train going into week 2.
That's right. We got your DFS fix here on the Consistently Cashing podcast. But if you want some player prop talk, Bob Long and I do the Prop It Like It's Hot podcast. So make sure you go check that out, both the podcast and the article, and check out all the great content at Big Guy Fantasy Sports. Make sure you follow Ron over on X. Give me a follow on X as well as Bob Long and the Big Guy Fantasy Sports channel. And we will see you in week 3 for the next edition of Consistently Cashing.